Imagine that moment, holding a piece of paper written by your father's hand. Words meant for your mother. Words you were too young to read when they first arrived. Hello there. I'm your Grandpa Joe, and this is Stories with Grandpa. Here, every tale has a secret to share. Every word carries wisdom, and every moment reminds us that stories never really die. So, are you ready? Let's start today's story. War is often remembered in battles, in maps, in dates written in history books. We hear about victories, about losses, about numbers. But behind every headline, every statistic, there are human stories. Stories written not in history books, but in ink, sealed in envelopes, and carried across oceans. This is the story of one such letter, a letter that traveled through war, was lost for decades, and finally found its way home, almost 75 years later. It was 1946. The war had officially ended, but not every soldier had returned. Some were still stationed abroad, waiting, counting days until they could step on American soil again. One of them was Sergeant Johnny Watkins. He was a young man, like so many others of his generation. He carried a uniform, a rifle, and the weight of war on his shoulders. But he also carried something else, the longing for home. Back in the United States, in a quiet town, his wife Marge waited for him, and waiting with her, a little boy, Johnny III. Too young to understand what war really was, but old enough to feel his father's absence at the dinner table. Old enough to notice his mother's eyes often drift toward the door, hoping it would open. Like many soldiers far from home, Johnny had only one bridge that kept him connected to the life he missed so much: letters. He wrote them whenever he could, sometimes long, sometimes short, always with love. Words became his comfort, his release, his way of whispering across an ocean. I'm still here. Don't forget me. And then on March 12, 1946, Johnny wrote a letter that would become unforgettable. In that letter, he spoke of watching other men go home while he stayed behind. He tried to sound strong, because soldiers often did. They didn't want to burden their loved ones, but between the lines, you could feel it. The loneliness, the longing, the weight of waiting. At the end of that letter, there was something small but powerful. A Valentine's message from his son, Johnny III. Simple words written with the help of his mother, but filled with innocence. The voice of a child reaching out across the world to a father who was not there to tuck him into bed. That letter traveled safely across the miles. It made it home to Marge. She held it, read it, perhaps read it again. Maybe she tucked it into a drawer or pressed it between family photos to keep the feeling close. But time, as it always does, moved forward. The letter was misplaced, forgotten, buried by years and memories. Then, decades later, on a quiet street in Colorado Springs, something remarkable happened. A passerby noticed an old envelope lying on the ground. The paper was yellowed, fragile. The ink had faded with age. At first, it might have looked like junk mail, something to step over, but instead they picked it up, and when they did, they realized it wasn't trash. It was a time capsule, a soldier's voice frozen in history. Miraculously, that letter found its way back to its rightful place. It reached Johnny's son, Johnny III, now an older man himself. Imagine that moment, holding a piece of paper written by your father's hand. Words meant for your mother. Words you were too young to read when they first arrived. A message carried across time, returned almost 75 years later. That letter is more than just paper and ink. It's a bridge between generations. It's proof that love can travel across war, across oceans, across time itself. It reminds us that history is not just about battles and generals, not just about borders redrawn or treaties signed. History lives in the small things, in husbands writing to wives, in fathers writing to children, in mothers waiting at kitchen tables, hoping each knock at the door isn't bad news. In every war, millions of letters crossed the world. Some were filled with hope, some with sorrow, some with nothing more than the daily details of survival. Many made it home. Some were lost forever. But each one carried not just words, it carried the soul of the person who wrote it. The story of Sergeant Watkins' letter is just one among millions, but its survival and its return teaches us something timeless. Even when voices fade, even when decades pass, love endures. So the next time you come across an old letter, tucked away in a box, hidden in an attic, or forgotten between pages of a book, stop for a moment. Remember, it may carry not just history, but a heartbeat. This was the story of a lost letter. A letter that carried the love of a soldier, the innocence of a child, and the strength of a family. A reminder that war may take lives, but words preserve them. And as long as words survive, so too do the people who wrote them. Now, my dear ones, that was today's story, and there are many more to tell. Now, before you go, remember, this old grandpa has many more stories to share. If you don't want to miss the next one, tap that subscribe button. It's like sitting right here beside me, ready for another tale. I'll be here, waiting with a new story just for you. Until then, keep the stories alive in your heart. Goodbye